Hello, my name's Avery. Welcome to my channel, and these are my least favorite books of 2017. These books are in order of least dislikable to the most hated or most disliked book from the entire year. The first book and the least favorite of all of these books is Finale by Becca Fitzpatrick, which is the fourth book in the Hush Hush series. Overall, this book just kind of ruined the series for me, which is why it's on this list. But in general, I liked the entirety of the Hush Hush series. I marathon read the first three books because they were so good, and then the fourth book just kind of almost ruined the series for me a little bit, but it didn't necessarily. It just didn't give it the conclusion I felt that it deserved. And also, I started to lose steam by the third book, and then the fourth book, I just felt okay, you're just trying to get an extra book out of this, I guess. I could have stopped if I had read 3/4 of the third book and, ended the series there. I would have been fine, but I finished it. I also have a thing with fourth books in series. It doesn't really matter what series it is. Normally, a fourth book in a series is going to be my least favorite book out of the whole series, even if I really liked it. The second best book on this list would have to be The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. While it's the second best of my least favorite books, it's obviously still one of my least favorite books of the entire year. And that's not necessarily because of the book itself, but mainly because of all the hype that it had and all the people that had been telling me, oh, Avery, you need to read this book and it's going to be great, it's going to change your life. But, it didn't really have a plot, and that's not really the type of book that I personally like to read. I might continue on with the series, but most likely not, just for the sheer purpose of, I don't know, there was really no plot and no reason for this book to exist. I get all of the quotes that people quote it for so many things, and I guess it's because it's funny. I get that, but it's not as big of a deal as people have made it out to be. It just had too much hype. It was just really overhyped for me, and I would have been fine if I had never read it. My fourth least favorite book of this entire year I read because of school. Technically here is the whole series. It's the Oedipus trilogy by Sophocles. But if I would say out of the three, my least favorite would be the first one, which is Oedipus the King or Oedipus Rex. And this for the main purpose of, it set up the whole, rest of the trilogy, but it put it in a way that wasn't, good. Who would want to read about such a dislikable character like Oedipus? Oh, he's a tragic hero, blah, 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 all that stuff from English class. But it's not, he doesn't make up for it in any way. He's just kind of constantly being stupid and evil and a prick, just one of the most dislikable main characters. And then they tried to redeem him in the second book of this, but just making him an old man doesn't redeem him in any sort of way. And all it did with the rest of the series was make my favorite character from the first book become one of my least favorite characters from the entire thing, which is Creon. So I don't understand. Yeah, tragic hero, good job, Sophocles, ancient Greek stuff. And my third to least favorite book is again from a series that I read in almost its entirety. I didn't continue this one after this book, but I read this series almost in its entirety, then I read this book and I couldn't handle it. And that's the third book in the Fallen series by Lauren Kate, which is Passion. This book, I personally enjoyed the first book a lot, and then the second book started to be okay, Luce is being annoying, but other than that, it's okay. And then this book was so unnecessary. They were doing the same thing for, how many was it? 420 pages. They did the same exact thing the entire book, and it was such a, I don't understand. It's the most cash grabby thing, oh, you can't think of a story? Do the same thing for an entire book with a different setting every time. And I read this series because one of my friends told me it was her favorite, and oh, you should read it, it's really good. And I really enjoyed the first two. The second one was so-so. But the first book I really liked. The second book was okay, and then by the time I got to this book, it was just so bad. And then I started the fourth book, but I got like 18 pages in, and I was just done with it. And again, that could be my like fourth book slumpy thing, but for the no, this series is DNF'd because this book was so bad, and I hated it, and I don't understand like how my friend could have endured through like still liking this book. Like, she still held this book in high esteem, and I don't understand. This book was just bad. It wasn't there. You gain nothing from this book. This book is just constantly like, oh, Luke's going back in time. Oh, well, there might be slight spoilers if you haven't read this, so if this is up, then I'll be talking about spoilers, kind of. So, basically, the entirety is just like, oh, Luce is going back in time to all of her, like, reincarnated selves or whatever, and then she kisses Daniel. I don't even know, is that his name? I don't remember. And then she dies, and then she goes back to a different time period, and then the same thing happens. She just watches it, like, for this whole 400-page book. The whole thing. She just watches herself die, constantly. And it's just extra. Like, I hate it. I don't know. The last two books on this list are from the same author. I read both of them for school. One of them I read last year, but, it's still in 2017, obviously. And then the other one I read this year, and they're both really terrible. And I don't see why they're held as such classics. Yes, again, there's kind of another... I don't like this author, in general. He's probably one of my least favorite authors of all time. And that is Charles Dickens. And out of the 4 books in here, this isn't the copy I read them out of, it's just the one that I own because the rest I got from my school library. But I've read Great Expectations and A Tale of Two Cities from him, and they're just really bad, and I don't understand why they're such held in high esteem and such high, like, oh, you must read this book before you die, it's so amazing, it's so great, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, all that crap. It doesn't even make sense, because he didn't, in my opinion, he didn't write this well, he didn't write either of them well, he doesn't write characters well, he writes them so that you hate them. Like, I don't see how anyone could, half of his characters that he wrote are really annoying. And then the ones that are good that he writes, end up dying in the end or something. So, my second to least favorite book was A Tale of Two Cities, because that was slightly better than Great Expectations. But Great Expectations is probably one of my least favorite books that I've read in my entire life. And I've read some pretty bad books, but Great Expectations was terrible. The whole thing, it's just about this little annoying brat, Pip, growing up, being in love with this rich girl, and that's all that it is, and it's just him pining after this girl this entire freaking book, and, whatever, he, completely disregards his family, he, shuns them because he's like, I'm gonna be a gentleman so I can love Estella, and where'd that get you, Pip? It got you nowhere. You didn't get an Estella, you didn't get to be a gentleman, you just got, you were just being a jerk the entire book to your entire family, which is just your sister and her husband, but still, I hate this book. And, from all the things that we had to learn about Charles Dickens prior to reading Great Expectations last year, he isn't a good person either. So, I don't know. All of his writing, he wrote for money. He didn't write for, writing. He didn't write for pleasure. He didn't... Yeah, whatever. More on... I can rant about Charles Dickens another time. He's just... oof. Least favorite author. But, yeah. So, again, my least two favorite books, Great Expectations, and A Tale of Two Cities, and then my my least favorite book of this year being Great Expectations. Yeah. Those are my least favorite books, basically. So, anyway, all of these books, are opinions, obviously. And if you like any of these books that I slandered for you, I'm sorry, but it's, again, my opinion, and I have zero regrets over disliking any of these books, because I like to say that I review things kind of in a fair way, in a decent way, not just oh, I hate this person because they're like someone in real life that I hate or anything. No, I try to honestly review all of the books that I read, and these just all were pretty bad. So, you know, maybe if you want to read these books to tell me wrong, that they aren't that bad, go for it. If you want to not read these books because I very strongly disliked, well, I either had zero opinion of or very strongly disliked this year. So, thank you for watching my video. If you would like to read my reviews, I will link my Goodreads down below. I also have a Bookstagram, which I will link below as well for you. And that's all. Thank you very much for joining me for my first video. Sorry for the bad setting. It's just what I have. I would also just like to say this is my, like, tripod that I was using. So, that worked out pretty well. I'm surprised. Good for that stack of books and a thingy. Yeah. Okay, bye.